Thank you for watching this Eaglecast. Eaglecasts are pre-recorded educational videos on various internet topics presented by Americaneagle.com web experts. The Eaglecast you are viewing today is titled Beyond the Buzz: Understanding Responsive Design. The presenter for this Eaglecast is Mike Avello. Mike is the Director of Front-End Development at Americaneagle.com and has helped develop and plan responsive designs for many clients. Mike will now lead us off.
Thanks, Alice. So many of you probably have heard the buzz about responsive web. So let's talk a little bit about what happened behind the scenes. We've seen all the devices, iPhones, iPads, tablets, and so on. We keep getting more and more devices for all these different screen sizes, and it's starting to get out of control at times. It's reached a point where it's no longer feasible to keep making a website for phone A, tablet B, desktop A, desktop B, and so on. Something had to change. So we no longer have a simple desktop only and a simple phone only design anymore. Users also expect an enjoyable experience across a wide range of their devices, because now users actually have a phone, a tablet, a desktop, a PC, a computer, every single thing is under their belt. Let's get into the definition of responsive web. A website that responds to the device that accesses it and delivers the appropriate output for it uses responsive design. Rather than designing multiple sites for different size devices, this approach designs one site but specifies how it should appear on varied devices. So what does that mean? Using this infographic, basically you have one URL, single set of content, you have one set of code, and we're going to manipulate how that can be rendered out on your different devices. The parts that really plays a role in that is we have a flexible grid, and we have flexible images that scale to the device, and then we have the CSS3 media queries that matches your visual representations to the screen resolutions. So how does all that actually work? The fluid grid itself is actually the foundation that the site is built on, and the images itself will then scale to the device utilizing that grid for your phone, your tablet, and your desktop. The media queries is really what specifies how all of that works together so that we can determine what changes may be applied to that visual layout for the different screen sizes that we're accounting for. So one example is that on a desktop you may have a side-by-side content region, but on your phone the side-by-side is going to be too small. So we want that to stack so that one's above the other. Now, there's also going to be pros and cons. Some of the pros to going with the responsive web is that the same content is going to be accessible for all devices. So there's no forking of content. You don't have different URLs, and you're going to have one URL for everything. Now, you also have a consistent experience across all devices. You don't have a mobile site that is a very simplified version of your desktop site in every way possible. It really is the same look and feel, just made to work on a smaller screen. As well as you're going to have an improved user-first approach to that overall UI design and user experience. And that's something to really drive home right there, is that at the end of the day, the people using the site is what the site should be built for. Now let's talk about the cons. You may have noticed that the first option is actually the same one from previously. That actually is correct. You may actually want to have your content be different based on your view. The best example of that would be to drive home a different experience across different devices. So an example would be that your store locator on your phone, you would want to make use of geolocation and all the technology that has to offer from that, while your desktop doesn't need to make use of that, again, based on the user. Now, another con is possible performance issues. Recent studies have said that 86% of responsive websites whose small screen views weigh as much as the larger screen view. What this really means is that your mobile site on your phone may actually be the same size in terms of data and bandwidth as that of your desktop site, if not worse. That's not the way to go. Now, the other con is the topic of responsive images. Previously, I mentioned that one aspect is flexible images. That also can play a role here, is that the technology simply is not there yet. And it's a complex beast in how you can get the images to scale down across every single device without actually having those performance issues again. An example of that would be on your desktop, you want a very large hero image that takes up the majority of your screen. To scale that down simply on the phone, you're still going to net the same image, just at a smaller size, but your file size is the same. Now, you may also have a slight understanding of what responsive web actually means, especially now. There still might be some questions and concerns. So let's go over some of the common misconceptions. Now, responsive design is not simply a type of mobile site. What I mean by that is that you're not getting a site geared only for a phone. It works for all devices. The responsive design is also not an identical website across all devices. So you don't get a one-size-fits-all. Again, keeping focus that a responsive web design is actually geared for the user on the device that they're on. It should be optimized in the idea of how they should be using it. It's also not an upgrade or a line item addition to a site. So you shouldn't go into it thinking that I just want to add responsive design to the site I already have. That's not really the way to go, because you're not going to gain the most out of it. It's also not the only solution for your mobile needs. Again, just because responsive web design is the buzzword right here, it may not fit your needs as a business. So let's go over some stats recently. So based on the current rate of changes and adoption, it's said that the mobile web will actually overtake desktop internet use around the 2014-2015 years. That's pretty amazing in itself, because think of how much the users are going to be using your site. If they're on it more on a smaller device, you need to cater for those needs. The e-business teams are also looking into all this. They're focusing on optimizing their website. They're focusing on using HTML5 to optimize. They're also looking into investing into tablet versions and probably phone versions and everything like that. With responsive web, that is one way that you could look into it to optimize across the board. Now, mobile commerce is also another item that can gain from this. There's almost 80% of smartphone owners in the United States have already used their phone for shopping related tasks. That's a lot. Now, in October of 2012, 68% of shoppers surveyed use mobile sites to buy, while 32% use native apps. 27% only bought through the mobile web, while 14% only used their apps to shop. Those numbers are only increasing as users demand right now action. Let's go a little bit deeper into the advantages and the disadvantages of responsive web design. So let's talk about why it's a good option. We want to improve the user experience. A user that visits your site on a phone is going to expect somewhat of the same consistency that they have gained from the desktop site. Seeing a site that looks completely different and operates as its own is going to be a bit discouraging. It also can save time and money when compared to creating individual sites across all devices. Digging deeper into that, you do not want to spend the time and resources to create a site as more devices come about. We already have the desktops, the phones, the tablets, the small tablets, and a number of other devices. We also have wider device and browser support. By catering to these devices and what's around the trends, we can actually account for more options. We also want to make it future friendly, but be aware that it's not future proof. What I mean by this is there's no way to account for what's out there as the next thing. What we can do is that by using responsive web techniques, we can aim to have it where it'll work across such a wide variety of screen sizes that a user will probably not have a problem with visiting the site. In addition to that, Google actually recommends responsive web design as the way moving forward with sites and treating that for mobile. Now, let's talk about why it might not work for you. I did mention that there's wider browser support, but there is a limit, and that is with legacy browser incompatibility. If you're targeting users that are on these older devices such as IE6 and IE7 and so on, they don't natively support the techniques that we need to make use of. There are ways of making it work, but it's going to be additional work and additional overhead. Another reason is that banner ads and videos are typically not fluid, especially when it comes from the banner agencies and those third parties. We also have, again, those possible site performance issues. It really comes down to what those needs are. Now, the content may also need to be different based on those devices. Again, if you need to have a unique experience on the device that you're targeting, the responsive web may not be the right choice. So let's go over a few examples. Now, Time Magazine did a recent overhaul, and what they have noticed is that when they went into the responsive web design, they actually had their page visits across the mobile and tablet and desktop are up significantly. Mobile was actually up 23% compared to what it was previously, while the homepage uniques are up 15%, and the time spent on that homepage was up 7.5%. The mobile bounce rate decreased by 26%. That's great because now you're not losing users that are using those smaller devices. An e-commerce example is Skinny Ties. They saw a 42% revenue growth increase on all devices. They also saw a 13.6% conversion rate increase. On the iPhone alone, they saw 377.6 in revenue growth. And on the iPhone as well, they had 71.9% conversion rate increase. Now, there was also an increase in duration by 44.6%. And again, they had a 23.3% lower bounce rate. Again, driving home that the users really want to see the stuff and use it as in the best way possible. Regent College went through a redesign as well, and they actually had a 99% increase in unique visitors while having a 77% increase in page views. And the online applications went up by 63%. Some of our own customers has also went through the responsive web transition. Club 21 Global, Notaway Valley Bank, and Performix are just some of the ones we have currently launched. We also are working on 20 to 30 projects at this very moment. Now, what exactly is the future? We don't really know. It may have more devices. We may see it in cars, the refrigerator, and everything. That is why this is so important, because we have so many devices right now that we can barely account for, and it's only going to increase. So what's next? If you find that all this is interesting and you want to discuss more, just contact us. We've also included some additional resources if you'd like to know more on this topic. And of course, feel free to get in touch. Thanks for watching this presentation. Hope you learned.